glorify videos and stuff we've been doing. That's not my only interest, as you know. I've got other things. I think this is backwards. I think I have other things in my life besides that fucking band, and the things that I want to talk about. So we're going to talk about it today. And it's about things I call this section or whatever of my channel grinds my gears. Things that really grind my gears, get under my skin, so to speak, but to do with video games. So maybe we would call it grinds my games or games my gears, something like that. Onomatopoeia or whatever when you do the same letter in the same word and you over and over. But anyway, this is about Nintendo and how the end of Nintendo, it's not only going on now, but it's been going on for quite some time. And there were some clues I picked up on that sort of illuminated this to me. So as you all know, Nintendo made the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Famicom, Family Computer, the best game system of all time. Never has been surpassed to this day. And, there's a lot of people out there that's sort of false representation of this hardware and Nintendo as a brand and as a company online that's been going on, saying, the Super Nintendo was better and Nintendo 64 was popular. But none of this happened. You have to understand, like, if you didn't grow up in this era, you're not going to know this. But if you grew up in that era, like I don't, you know that once the Super Nintendo came out, that was kind of it. Nobody played games at that anymore, unless they were Nintendo games, because the Nintendo was the best system that came out. And the interesting thing is, at the end of the Nintendo's lifespan, the games were better than at the beginning, and so there was, it's made me think that had the Super Nintendo not come out, now again, the Super Nintendo, nobody cared about that. Everybody liked the original Nintendo more because it had the good games like Contra, and the Super Nintendo didn't really have any good games. It had Pilot Wings, and nobody really liked that one, and Blackthorn, and just some weird, not very fun games like that. But the Nintendo, I had Mario 3 on it. And I had Punch-Out. I had so many better games on the Nintendo than the Super Nintendo. And so after Nintendo, nobody really cared anymore about video games. And it's just been like a slow decline since then. And you might be thinking, well, the Super Nintendo came out like 93 or 92. How could it be a decline that long? And it's like, you have to understand, though, Nintendo's been a company since 1800s. So back, that far, 1800s, that's many years ago. And so this is 2020 to 91, 92. It's just a drop in the pan. So it's just been this slow slope of declining profits and interest in this long duration of time. And now nobody really plays Nintendo. They have their Switch and all this. They think that everybody's playing the Switch. Everybody likes the Switch. But I never see the Switch out. You're supposed to see it. It's a public system. You're supposed to play it with friends on trains and restaurants. And every time I've been to a restaurant, even after the pandemic, I don't see anybody with their Switch and that sort of thing. I might even see more people with the original Nintendo, just because I walked out of a store once and there was a used game shop and I saw a guy buying one, but I didn't see anybody with a Nintendo Switch in their hands. And I predict that, in fact, this failure, which was the release of the Super Nintendo, if they had avoided that we might see games that look just as good as Halo and Grand Theft Auto and all these new games on the original Nintendo. Because if the games were getting better up till the 90s, imagine just that long span of developers understanding the hardware more and being able to get more out of it. We might have virtual reality Nintendo games if only things hadn't gone the wrong way and the Super Nintendo had come out to abruptly sort of kill the lifespan of the NES. And I could say that we might have Nintendo games coming out for 50 or even 100 more years. And you could have thousands and thousands of games to play on that system. Whereas you only have a few now on the new systems. They don't release them very often. And when they do, there's all these things you have to buy, these DLCs and things like that. So there's not many games to play on the new systems because it just takes too long to make them. Whereas the Nintendo, we could have been making millions of games. And, I think that it could still happen. Nintendo did release the Nintendo Classic. It was a little version of the Nintendo. And so I predict that based on the success of that, and it was a success, that Nintendo is going to re-release at some point the original Nintendo Entertainment System with new cartridges, all the old cartridges remade, reprinted so that you can get them more easily and more cheaply. And they're going to sell these games for $29.99 a piece. That's my prediction. And we'll probably see that by 2023 to 2025. It probably isn't that far along, because I think Nintendo's recognizing now with their online service on the Switch and the Nintendo Classic that these are really the games people want to play. This is really what people are interested in, and nobody cares about the new games and the online games and all those 3D ones that everyone, that's all around. Nobody actually plays those except for the really super nerds, the competitive gamers. Everybody else is either playing the original Nintendo, or they have quit playing video games altogether because there is no good games anymore. So this is my opinion. Keep in mind, I don't have any insider information to back this. This is just based on decades of knowledge, game knowledge and experience, and keeping up with the industry and keeping up to date on things, and just sort of watching it collapse over time. It was a very illustrious business in the 90s and the 80s with the golden era of the arcades, and now gaming is pretty much dead. And it's sad to see that, but that is the reality. And I think Nintendo's going to bring it back. They're going to put all their other hardware aside and say, this is shit. We don't need this. This is all a mistake. It was just a waste of money and R&D and everything else. We have a perfectly good system here. And this, I want to cheers right now. This is the original Famicom controller for the family computer. It's attached to the system. So cheers to you, all the Nintendo fans out there, and to Nintendo, because I think we're going to see some big things coming out of that camp very soon.